My name's Jan Bebbington, and I'm the director of the Pentland Centre for Sustainability in Business. And I'd like to welcome you to the 2022 Leadership Insights and Masterclass series, which we conduct in collaboration with our corporate guardians, NatWest. Our first session for the year, I'm delighted to say, is with Sara Brennan, Pentland's Brands Positive Business Director. The Pentland Centre and Pentland Brands share a really nice connection. Our centre is funded by the Reuben Foundation Charitable Trust, which is a foundation run by the owners of Pentland Group plc. Pentland Group is the owner of many of the world's most iconic sports brands. You would have used their branded goods even if you didn't realise it. Certainly in my wardrobe and sports bag, I have Speedo, Canterbury and Berghaus, which are all Pentland brands. So I'd like to welcome Sara today, who it's lovely to see you again, Sara, and we're just going to have a conversation around a series of topics that we hope you'll find interesting. So my first question is that what was the connection and why did Pentland Brands be keen to be involved with Lancaster and ultimately to support the Pentland Centre?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me to speak at the masterclass today. I'm really looking forward to the conversation we have. Simply one of the reasons that we wanted to be involved with Lancaster University and the Pentland Centre was so that we can learn how businesses can better address key environmental issues. So for us, it was about finding sustainability solutions that can be scaled and applied to businesses so that we can help us look at it as a collaborative effort. So it's not just showing what we can do as a business, but how we can all contribute together. I think one thing that lots of businesses are really good at is looking at what others are doing and what others are doing in their own industry and space. But perhaps we're not as good as looking at what's going on outside of our industry. And so that's one of the key reasons for wanting to work with Lancaster University Pentland Centre, is that we get all that outside knowledge from different industries, as well as getting that academic rigour that you get through working with an institution like yourselves. And I also have to mention that we do get to work with brilliant professors like yourself, Jan, who've got a fountain of expertise that can help us in our everyday practice as well.
Well, I can't disagree with that, but maybe I should. So tell me something about Pentland Brands' journey towards bringing sustainability issues into your business, but also what kind of sustainability issues arise in your work?
So Pentland Brands has been looking at sustainability for many years. Perhaps we just haven't called it that throughout the time of Pentland's history. So sustainability for us is really about looking at it holistically. So it's not just focusing on the planet and the environment issues, which I think was probably where we first started our sustainability journey on looking, but actually realizing the role of looking at people and the role that people have in helping us achieve our sustainability goals. So we've been developing our strategy for over a year now, and we used a blend of engaging with people across the business, so taking that top-down and bottom-up perspective. We also actually work with the Pentland Centre on mapping our biggest impact areas as well as our biggest threats. And so one thing that came out of all this work was that we really wanted a strategy on sustainability that was action focused. We didn't want it to just be words on a page. And so I'm really pleased to announce that last year we launched our Positive Business 100-1-0 strategy. And that really sets out how we're going to take action for people and planet. This ambitious plan delivers on our commitments that we've set out, but it's also looking at 3 major goals that we want to achieve by 2032, which actually happens to be the centenary of our business. So looking at sustainability holistically, the strategy addresses key global issues that look at environment, physical mental health, transparency, human rights, diversity, inclusion. It really is holistic in its sense of application of sustainability. And although we know there's much more work to be done, we're still committed to helping create a world that's better, fairer and greener. So one thing that I'm really proud of that we've been able to do with our strategy is actually it's formed a really crucial part of our overall business strategy. So embedding sustainability in its holistic sense is how we're going to actually achieve success as a business as well.
That's brilliant. And I'd really like to pick up on what you said about impacts and threats, because the last 2 years have not been boring in any respect whatsoever. And, the current time is, maybe way too lively for anyone's happiness. So how do you navigate some of those? You have your plan, but then the landscape changes around you. And I guess I'm sort of thinking about the challenges that Brexit may have brought to your business, but also the challenges of COVID and how you have navigated across those kind of issues.
So I actually think having long-term targets really help when operating in challenging times. I think it helps guide us and stay focused on the bigger long-term picture, whilst we are perhaps fighting fires in the short term. But I think more importantly, it guides us on how to operate during a crisis. And I think this is one of the things that I'm really proud of as why we're part of a global family business, is that we're a business built on family values. So we look at having strong long-term relationships, which I think gets the best out of our people and our partners. And so I think this is really key to navigating some of these difficult challenges we've faced, such as COVID and Brexit, but also some of the future challenges that we're addressing now and looking at now. I think doing the right thing has been at the core of how we've operated for many years. And I think doing the right thing in times of crisis really helps you get through and navigate some of those crises. If I look at the work that was done as a business during COVID, I was really proud of how Pentland stood with its partners and helped them through that as much as possible, and the responsibility that we took there. I think it's probably also testament as to why we're still around 90 years on and looking ahead to our centenary. So having that longer term strategy helps you lift your head up out of the fire that you're fighting at the time, but also helps guide you on how to navigate that through in the right values as well.
I'm really interested in how you're talking about both strategy and values and the intersection of those things together. And that maybe in some ways is, sort of an introduction to my next question, because Pentland's a very large business, and it's a business with global reach, both in terms of its brands, but also where materials come through the supply chain. But can those lessons be applied to companies of different sizes, and particularly maybe SMEs, which are a majority company pattern in the UK, but also around the world?
I think if we pick up on the values piece, that can apply to any business regardless of size. And I think we've seen throughout the pandemic and the future of what talent looks like globally now, people want to work for values-led organisations. So setting those values up as a business, regardless of size, I think that's really important for the longevity of your business. It's not just about the people and the value side, but actually having that longer term strategy. And again, this is something that you can do regardless of business size, actually helps you focus on where you can drive the biggest impact from where you're sitting, from your viewpoint. I think that with sustainability, and it's particularly one of the challenges that I face daily, there's always so much to do. And it's actually saying that you can't do everything, and that's okay. I think that actually really helps to free yourself up into delivering where you really can drive impact. So having that strategy helps you stay on course and focused, and actually helps you drive the biggest difference. So regardless of size, or if you're an SME, I would say putting people and the values at the heart of how you run your organisation, and having something that you want to go after long term will really help you, because it'll help you say no to the things that you can't achieve that maybe are outside of your scope as well.
That answer certainly gels with the academic work that we've conducted here in LUMS, looking at leverage points, because sustainability is a systems characteristic. And for example, if you wanted to decarbonise the whole of the UK, that's a government facing leverage point, and along with local authorities, and companies would have their part to play in that, but the main leverage is at that level. So what I took from what you said is actually it's finding the right leverage point as well, and they're not for different issues there might be different leverage points, and how to take that forward. So that certainly coincides with a great deal of research work, who's trying to find that magic mix of the leverage points that work for issues in particular times and particular places. One of the things with leverage points is that it's always easier to achieve outcomes if you hold hands with other people, and we might call those other people stakeholders in a formal sense, that is people that are affected by an organisation's actions, but also who can affect those an organisation through their actions. I mean, how do you think about your stakeholders in terms of who they are and how are they part of your journey and adhering together with your values-based propositions?
So I think it's a really good point, Jan. Looking at a lot of the issues that we're facing, many people who are sitting alongside us, could be competitors, could be consumers, could be customers, we're all facing these issues together. And so sustainability is an area of collaboration, not competition. And I think that's something that we've really found as a business, is actually working with others means that we can drive a bigger impact. I think that's really key for SMEs as well, looking at who else are in their space that they can collaborate with so they can share resource, share knowledge. Working with people like yourselves at the Pentland Centre is a fantastic thing to look at doing as well. I think when I'm looking at the people that we partner with on a day-to-day basis and those stakeholders, having these clear relationships and these long-standing relationships, they're built on trust and values and having certain expectations that we expect. I think having these clear standards documented and that partnership being known up front, I think it really helps foster and build those long-term relationships, which I think is also key. So having those clear standards of what you expect of a partner to make sure they're aligned to what you're wanting to achieve as a business, especially when it comes to positive business in our sense, is really key as well. So the more that they can share that value, share that vision, I think that's really important because they can come on that journey with you as well.
And that makes a lot of sense. And certainly one of the other fabulous centres that we have within LUMS is the Centre for Family Business. And I have really great conversations with them about that intersection between family business and sustainability. I mean, as a family business, and I know that you've worked in other places as well, does it feel different, or is it manifest in different ways when it's a long-standing family business connection, noting that you're coming up to 90 years and then looking forward to 100 years of operation?
I think in Pentland Brands, particular family business that I'm working in now, the one thing that I would say is that people are at the core of everything we do. And I think that really sets us apart. I don't have to spend my time fighting to get a seat at the table to have a discussion. The executive team, the family themselves are available. And I think that is what really sets Pentland Brands apart, is that having people at the core of everything we do also means that those people are available. And I think that is probably one of the biggest challenges that I know lots of businesses face in sustainability, is actually getting some of these actions on the table. That isn't the case in the family business that I work with at Pentland Brands, and I think that's what makes it different. So it does feel different. Yes, I do feel part of that wider Pentland Brands family, which is fantastic, and one of the reasons that I choose to get up every morning with delight to come to work and work at Pentland.
Yeah, and that certainly rings very true for me, because Mr. Pentland, senior and junior, so both Stephen and Andy, are enormous support to me in the work that I do through the research and impact side, and a very hugely valuable resource in terms of insight and helping us make connections and really thinking about our work. So they're certainly superb, in my case, stakeholders, in your case, the owners of the company. So looking forward then, and there's plenty of challenge out there in a sustainability journey forward in time, not least the most recent IPCC report, which makes for really stark and quite depressing reading in all sorts of ways. From the huge variety of issues that you might face, what's your biggest challenge that you face currently in that sustainability universe?
So I think there's multiple challenges out there that I think, if I was to pick maybe two to bring to light, I think the complexity of the sheer size of an apparel supply chain. There's lots of different information at different levels within that supply chain, very complex data that we're asking of vendors when it comes to energy, when it comes to water, chemical use. And that's not just at our tier 1, but beyond those tiers as well. I think it's then taking that data and actually making it into meaningful, something that you can actually make meaningful to help you drive decisions. The good thing is there are lots of tools and companies and memberships out there that we can collaborate on to actually break that down and share that data among competitors, among others, among our peers, so that we can actually not overwhelm the vendors and the factories that we're working with as well, but actually help them by sharing that data. I think that complexity piece is always a challenge, and I think it's one that we're not going to get away from. Especially we're even just having that conversation internally around carbon and decarbonisation. It's such a technical conversation that it can be difficult to find that right level of detail to get into. But the one thing that I would say is a benefit to that is everybody is becoming more and more aware of these challenges that we're facing and becoming more self-educated as well. So I think it's something that people feel personally passionate about now, as well as business passionate for. I think another key challenge is actually staying focused on those longer term goals, because it is a moving science, because there always are new issues being discovered. It can be easy to deviate from that strategy of where you've said are the biggest impacts you want to try and achieve, and go and be focused on something else, where perhaps if you do that, maybe you're diluting your reach or your impact. So I think just staying in the lane, staying focused, but also being open and listening to the changes of science as well as they do happen.
I loved your metaphor of staying in the lane, because I came right back to Speedo swimsuits when I was thinking of that. Maybe even as recently as, well, there's some people who think it now, but certainly 20 years ago when I was maybe getting into this field, lots of people said that sustainability is going to cost you money. And of course, at some times in some places, depending on what you do, that may well be true. But how does that balance play out with Pentland in terms of pursuing long-term strategic, quite complex goals, but at the same time being a viable business?
So I think, sustainability is an investment. I wouldn't see it just as a cost, but it's an investment. And I think it's an investment to make now, rather than waiting for 5-10 years down the line, when perhaps legislation and levies and fees might actually make that investment in sustainability more. I think if we don't see sustainability as an investment, we might not have a planet still left to support and give us businesses going forward. So it's definitely an investment from a business sense, but also from a personal sense as well. We want the planet to still be here. We want to keep it within the 1.5 degrees of global warming. But that's not to say that you can't still have a profitable business if you are investing in sustainability. We've seen that consumers want businesses to be sustainable. They want brands to have sustainable products and brands to be sustainable and stand for things. And I think that that's an investment, and delivering that to consumers and to customers is something that you can do in a way that is still making a profit. I think those businesses who aren't investing in sustainability perhaps won't be as profitable as others in the longer term as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're sort of coming to the end of our conversation, so I want to give you a space to say anything else that you think people who are watching this masterclass series might be interested in.
So I think for me, the takeaway is everybody can do something, and you can do something that's really relevant for your brand and for your business. At Pentland Brands, we've come up with our Positive Business 100-10 Positive Business Strategy. But actually our brands as well are actually making that really relevant and authentic to them in how they talk about what they're doing. So I would just take the opportunity to think about what's your legacy that you want as a business, what is legacy you want as a brand, and you can make it happen as well. So go after it and put, make a stance, make that longer term commitment, and engage your business and your community on that, because at the end of the day, it's through our people and through working collaboratively together that we'll achieve what we want to achieve as a business.
I thank you for that. And that really gels with the making a difference, and certainly the support of Pentland to the Pentland Centre is helping us make a difference, but also it really echoes the Pentland Centre members, which are drawn from across the university, although predominantly from people in business and management, is how I try to manage that legacy as well, because at the end of the day, the people are doing great research, teaching our students about these things and working with others. I'd like to say thank you, Sarah, for taking the time to have this conversation today, and wish everyone who's taking part in the Leadership Insights and Masterclass series a good day, and particularly thank our corporate guardians, NatWest, for enabling this series to happen.